Hey, welcome to the After Show. It's a show after the show. That's why we named it the After Show. See how creative we get here? Very creative. A lot of times we don't have time in the full show to actually get to some of the things that we want to talk about. One of those things that definitely popped up today was the latest, the news yesterday from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. Matter of fact, Robert Gordon, the director, was on this morning with Steve Kelly in West Michigan's Morning News. Some of the question about the orders that came out, they're not executive orders, but they are sort of health department orders that came out yesterday in an emergency declaration. A lot of them very similar, and if not the same as what the governor had issued in her executive orders. Those were ruled unconstitutional in the state of Michigan by the Supreme Court on Friday, and that ruling that came out. So are these legal? Here's what Director Gordon had to say.
The Supreme Court ruled that a 1945 statute that Governor Whitmer was operating under was unconstitutional. There are many other statutes. I am operating under a statute that was designed specifically to deal with circumstances like this, not a general emergency authority, but a specific authority dealing with epidemics.
So he says he can do it because of this specific statute that he believes he's operating under the authority of, and it deals with epidemics. Attorney Katherine Henry, who actually argued in that Supreme Court case, is on the phone with us right now. Wanted to check in with you, Katherine. First of all, welcome on. We appreciate you being here. And is this legal, I guess, is our question.
Yeah, and just so you know, when you played his audio clip, I didn't hear anything, but I do know what statute he thinks he's relying on. So there's a couple of pieces here. First and foremost is the Supreme Court was very clear when they said that the EPGA was unconstitutional because she was given, under that statute, legislative powers. And she's the executive branch, and you can't do that. That defies the whole concept of separation of powers. And so for her subordinate, who is the director of the Department of Health and Human Services, for him to issue these emergency orders based on the exact same concept of power, just put into a different statute, it's blatant disregard for the ruling of the Supreme Court. It's blatant disregard for the plain words of our state constitution itself, or for the freedom of the people of the state of Michigan. Not to mention, look at the actual wording of the statute. He's looking at MCL 333.2253, and that statute allows him essentially to do three things. He's allowed to prohibit the gathering of people for any purpose, which I'm going to talk about in a second. He's allowed to issue an order to ensure the continuity or continuation of public health services and to enforce current public health laws. Well, as we know, it's not a law to wear a mask in the state of Michigan or to have the social distancing or all those pieces. So that part of the argument is gone. He's not using that part of the statute. If you look at to ensure the continuity or continuation of public health services, they can provide a mask to people if people, want a place to go and get that. They could provide education on the coronavirus and what they believe are good ways to combat the coronavirus or avoid getting the coronavirus, et cetera. Those would be services. But a service is a voluntary thing that somebody can choose to utilize or not. And so to continue offering those services to people or other general public health services, that has absolutely nothing to do with requiring people to wear masks in public or to be socially distant from one another. So that leaves us with that first piece that he could potentially be using, which is the ability for him to prohibit gatherings of any size. What's important with that is that although that is actually in that statute, word for word, so he's following the statute for that part of his order, it's clearly not constitutional. Our state constitution alone says that we created our state constitution to secure our blessings of freedom undiminished. It literally says the word undiminished. And it says right in there, Article 1, Section 1, and Article 1, Section 3, and Article 1, Section 4. It talks about our right to peaceably assemble, as well as we have the right to worship God to the, according to the dictates of our own conscience. So if they're going to try to limit public gatherings for any purpose that are peaceful, they have zero authority in the Constitution to do so. Never mind the whole element of our U.S. Constitution that doesn't allow that to happen either. So this state law does allow him to do that, but the state law is also just as unconstitutional as the one the court declared on last Friday, the 1945 law, how that is equally as unconstitutional. So there is no legal basis, sound legal basis whatsoever for these emergency orders being issued by this director.
So what happens next? Is this going to have to just turn into another legal fight? I mean, is that what we're looking at here?
So lucky for us, even though Gretchen is lying to the people of Michigan by putting out these statements and videos saying that the court said that she didn't violate any laws, which she 7-0, they said she did. And she's putting out statements that her orders keep in effect for at least 21 days. Her attorney actually filed on her behalf a motion in the Supreme Court yesterday to give her 28 days. And their arguments are a stretch, to say the least. So I'm hopeful, though, because they are the ones opening the door in that regard, that when I file my response, and hopefully the legislature will file a response, and hopefully the plaintiffs in that case will file a response, it is my hope that the court will do the right thing and not force the people of Michigan to essentially open up a whole new lawsuit just about those orders when she is in direct response to the court's order, doing a runaround and using a different statute that does the exact same thing. So I'm hopeful that we'll get some briefs, or some responses filed to that governor's motion very shortly here in the next day or two, and that we'll see a decision from the Supreme Court on the same within the week or within a week. I'm very hopeful that that's something that can be taken care of in that regard.
So you're saying that the Supreme Court could actually step in and rule on this from the Department of Health and Human Services as well?
They have the potential to do so because the governor actually brought up those orders in her motion in front of the Supreme Court. So the issue is already before them. And I hope that they don't, try to play a procedural game, if you will, and try to force it out to come back in under a different case. They could, but I really believe that given the context of everything and how thoroughly they have made this whole general issue go through the legal process, I believe that they're going to handle this once and for all and make that declaration that under none of these statutes is she allowed to exercise the same power they just declared was unconstitutional.
Attorney Katherine Henry is on with us right now in the after show and answering these questions. The Michigan Department of Health and Human Services came out. Robert Gordon, director, on the show earlier, actually on West Michigan's Live, West Michigan's Morning News with Steve Kelly earlier today, and making some of these points. Here's what else he had to say.
I would love for the governor and legislature to work something out. It is my job, and this is again in statute, to do all I can to protect and save Michiganders' lives. We know that orders and clear rules save lives, and that's why we issued the order yesterday.
Katherine Henry, I know he feels like he's doing what he's has the authority to do. People now in the state of Michigan back and forth this limbo that we're really in. Unfortunately, I really hasn't seen the media ask any real questions about the authority other than our television or our radio station today. I haven't seen it with television. I haven't seen it with print. Ask him and nail him down and say, why do you believe you have the authority? Now, he pointed to that statute today, but didn't go in depth on it. In the meantime, we're just hearing this stuff reported that, well, they can do this and they have the right to do this and they're going to do this. And that's the latest. They just report it like it's fact. And it's really concerning because we don't have this back and forth conversation about how did the law really work here in Michigan? And what does this really mean? Because we're so uneducated as a whole, I guess. We're really missing out on the actual process and how these things should really work.
Right, and something that's missed a little bit here in the context of things is that although, like I said, the only piece that he has the statutory or by law authority to do in this order is to prohibit gathering, the Constitution clearly does not allow him to put that in place for a variety of reasons. But even more so, he has a duty under Article 11, Section 1 of our state Constitution, as well as Article 6 of our U.S. Constitution. He has a duty to uphold the U.S. and Michigan Constitutions, whether he likes them or not. It's not his job to save lives at the expense of all of the provisions of our Constitution that are keeping him in check. And so he in that sound clip, seemed to think that his job is just to save lives whichever way he thinks is necessary, period, without any regard to any elements of our state Constitution or our U.S. Constitution. He is violating his oath of office just the same as Governor Whitmer is, and it's disgusting. And it's disgusting that you're right. The media is not questioning him on this. I would say to him face to face, why do you not have the obligation to uphold your oath of office, to uphold the U.S. and Michigan Constitution? What about the separation of powers? How is you as a member of the executive branch, how is it that you can exercise powers belonging to the legislative branch? This was already decided. This very issue was just decided on Friday, and you didn't like it under one statute being declared unconstitutional, so you just ran to the next statute you could that does the exact same thing. It's just disgusting, Justin.
So what the questions we're getting, and by the way, if you have questions for Attorney Katherine Henry, you can ask him right now. Just drop them in the chat here, whether you're watching this on Facebook, Twitter, wherever, and we'll try and get to them. What's the recourse? Are there any teeth, or what can be done to this governor to make her obey the law? We constantly hear about what the possible consequences might be if we don't comply with what. In matter of fact, there were consequences, including jail time, in this release from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services yesterday. But what is there? Is there anything, any teeth to make the governor to step into line? What happens there?
Well, as far as having her stop doing this, it's really going to take a declaratory judgment on the part of the Supreme Court to tell her once and for all, it doesn't matter what statute you find, if you are exercising legislative authority, you cannot do that. So yes, we know there are bad laws on the books, but stop trying to dig up all the bad laws and use them as tools against the people here. As far as holding her responsible, that won't be done through either of these lawsuits that are pending before the Supreme Court. That would have to be done in a different setting. She'd have the same rights in a criminal case or in a civil case that any one of us would have. And so right now, her responsibility is not being litigated. It needs to be, but it's not being litigated in this case yet. But I would encourage, if anyone would like to see the Attorney Grievance Commission do something about her law license, I would think that she would be a prime candidate for disbarment when she is blatantly lying to the people about what the law says, when she is blatantly, misleading us, and then utilizing the whole statutory process and playing all these games despite very clear direction and wording from the Michigan Supreme Court. So that's one way to hold her responsible right now, is to file with the Attorney Grievance Commission a complaint against her and specifically stating these things. Another way is the recall efforts are underway, and my understanding is it's about 5 or 10 days, something like that, when the recall group is going to be out officially collecting signatures for the recall. So if that's another avenue that people want to utilize, that would send a message as well.
Attorney Katherine Henry on the line with us right now. And of course, if you want to go over and check out that information, the recall, it's restorefreedomkh.com. So I'm going to get to some of these questions here. Jenny asked, "What is the governor? Saying was a 4-3 decision, a 7-10?" This is a good idea to clarify this, I guess. She says, "How will anyone know what the lies are?" Thank you, Jenny, for that question. Katherine, there were two decisions that were made, and can you tell us the difference between those two?
Yeah, so if anybody wants to see the words of the Supreme Court themselves, I haven't double-checked in the last couple days, but I do believe that if you go to the main front page of the Supreme Court's website, you'll be able to see the order of the court. Mm-hmm. If not, or if you can't find it on their website, you can go to my website, Restore Freedom, K as in Catherine, H as in Henry.com, and click the Resources tab. Then under the documents, you'll see the very first government document listed is this most recent Supreme Court order. So you can follow along and read it yourself. But what they do is the court puts out, it's a 107-page set of opinions by all the justices. And the opinions were joined in by others to make a majority, and some, have dissenting opinions. It makes up that 107 pages. The first 4 pages of that document, though, they call it the syllabus, but it's a summary. It's a summary put out by the court of what the ruling is, and it tells what the 2 questions were. I want to say it starts on page 2, halfway down, and it says that the 7 and 0 part, 7 of the 7 justices said very clearly that the governor violated the Emergency Management Act of 1976 by continuing to issue orders after April 30th. That her powers under that law very clearly ended April 30th. So not a single executive order after April 30th could proceed. Not the mask order, not the stay-at-home orders, not the business orders. None of those had after April 30th under that statute. Now, the 4 and 3 decision that came out was on Whitmer's use of the 76 law. Mm-hmm. That was declaring the entire 1945 law to be unconstitutional. No, including Gretchen Whitmer, can ever use that one ever again. So I hope that kind of clarifies that.
You broke up a little bit in there, but basically you're saying that they said that the law itself is unconstitutional. She can't ever use that law again. That's correct?
The 1944.
Yeah, we're losing you a little bit with your cell phone. Katherine is in the car right now, so we're going to wait till we get a little bit better signal with her, and we'll see if we can get her to clarify some of this. We'll get to your questions, too, if you're in the chat right now. Katherine,
oh, I'm sorry about that. I got back.
No, that's okay. Can you just say that one more time? As in, there are 2 different rulings, the 4-3 and the 7-0, the unanimous. So there are 2 differences. Uh-oh. You got to love cell phones. It's the technology.
Was declared unconstitutional, and that was the 4 and 3 decision, declaring that entire law unconstitutional, so no government can ever use it again. It was the 1976 law that 7 Supreme Court justices agreed she violated that state law.
All right, Sue says online, there is some talk that the Michigan Department of Human Health and Services, and you've already kind of touched on this, but it says that MDHHS was on the lawsuit being sued with the governor in the beginning. Is this true, and is that part of it? They are named in that. I was looking at the documents. Does that have any effect on this?
Yes, they are named.
Does that have any effect on what we're talking about and how that links in with what you said earlier?
Yes, they've been essentially on legal notice this entire time of these issues, of the separation of powers issue, of all of those pieces, representation in this fight the whole time. So definitely, in fact, they actually have listed their own attorney in this latest motion, separate and distinct from the governor's attorney. But it very much plays in our favor that it's not like they can claim ignorance or that they have had no right to be able to respond to any of these things in the court. They actually absolutely have this entire time been included as a party, both of them.
Lauren wants to know, is what she's done criminal? And if so, who and how can she be removed from office or placed under arrest?
Definitely what she's doing is criminal. We have some state law on point to that. Also, there's some federal law. She's violated U.S. Section 241. She is essentially, under color of law, she is infringing upon the rights of others. Definitely, we should have law enforcement agencies step up and issue the warrants and arrest her. Why we are not seeing that, I honestly don't know. But keep the pressure on your local and state and federal government officials and make your voice heard on that point and let them know enough is enough. And no one is above the law, and no one should be able to get away with it as they hold an office such as governor.
You're saying that the governor could actually be arrested?
Absolutely. For a 10-year felony.
Who would do that?
Really, there's any number of law enforcement officials that can do that. So certainly our federal law enforcement officials can do that, but even our local law for the state charges that could be pending against her. So in reality, nearly any of them who have her actions have been done in their jurisdiction. That's what it boils down to.
Okay. Interesting. Lots of other questions. We'll try and get to yours too here. If you leave yours in the chat, we're on Facebook and Twitter as you're watching this right now. Probably could stream that as well as we post it up on our after show when it comes to the questions that people might be having on our podcast section as well. You can always email. We'll try and get these questions answered by Katherine, if not today, at another time. Lori wants to know, can the governor, along with what you just mentioned, can her and her team be held in contempt of court?
I'm sorry, what?
Lori wants to know, can the governor and her team be held in contempt of court?
I would argue that she should be held in contempt of court, absolutely, because she is blatantly disregarding the whole process going through some moments. The whole process. She comes out saying blatant lies about it, and then she'll say in the next breath that she's so disappointed that the court would issue such a ruling. Well, okay, great. She's disappointed that they're upholding the Constitution, but she has the same duty. So I would think that callous disregard for what they are doing and the provisions of the Constitution make her prime for a contempt of court citation, certainly.
Terry asked about impeachment. I know that's a little different than a recall. Impeachment is not something the citizens would do. That has to be done by the legislature, right?
It sure does, and I would like to think at this point that although our Republican legislature as a whole has been too much playing their political games and wanting to boost their own political careers, I would think at this point they would finally get enough of them to be able to band together and begin that process and get her out of office that way. It should not be on the responsibility of, just under 1.2 million people in the state of Michigan to go out and get those signatures put together. It can be the 110 members of the State House of Representatives and the 38 members of the State Senate. They can get this job done, and now is the time.
Kirk asked a question here on Facebook. Can the governor be sued? I know you talked about this yesterday a little bit, but can the governor be sued for the loss of all these jobs and businesses and even lives from policies and executive orders that she's issued, Katherine? I
would argue, yes, that because she's committing an abuse of process and malicious prosecution, and she's somebody could definitely file a 42 U.S.C. Section 1983 claim against her, which is a federal claim for them having their rights violated. Because she's stepping outside of the scope of her governmental authority over and over and over again, she should be able to be sued in her personal capacity. It should not have to be the tax dollars of the people of Michigan putting that legal bill, because it's not the governor's office doing that anymore. When she steps outside of the scope of the governor's authority, it is now on her shoulders alone to bear the cost of that. The unfortunate aspect is that the way the lawsuit would start, or any of these lawsuits would start, is it would most likely end up listing her in her professional capacity as well as her personal capacity, or you would end up with a judge who would just throw out a lawsuit that merely was started in her personal capacity because they too heavily rely on the concepts of immunity, which in this instance is a clear example of why those kinds of immunities are not acceptable in a republic like this.
All right, another question here. Can a workplace, a place of work, actually, let me do this one first. Who'd be the best to contact? Can a workplace enforce a mask?
Can the workplace enforce wearing masks?
Yes.
That was the question?
Mm-hmm.
Not legally, no. No, they can't. In fact, when we have workplaces, I was just on Trucker Randy's show up north in the Sheboygan area this morning, and a listener was telling him about how a manager of a store up there was referencing the newest order from the director of the Department of Health and Human Services, and saying that, it's basically, again, it's the law, it's the government, I can't do anything about it. When you have the government directing private entities to do their dirty work for them, and then you have the private entities agreeing to do the dirty work for them, those private entities are no longer classified merely as a private entity, but rather as an arm of the state. They are now just as equally as responsible and limited by the provisions in our state constitution or other laws that protect the rights of the people. So, no, an employee cannot be forced to follow one of these dictates pursuant to this order. It's besides that, we each have an Article 1 amendment of our U.S. Constitution right to all the unenumerated rights, the rights that God gave us, that our government officials have the duty to protect, and we don't have to wait for the court to spell out what those unenumerated rights are. They're unenumerated for a reason, and yet we still retain the right to breathe fresh air or not have to cover our faces in public. So you combine all those together, the answer is no. An employer cannot force an employee to wear a mask like that.
LC asked about a class action lawsuit. Can a class action lawsuit be brought against the governor, Catherine?
Probably, but I am not a fan of class action lawsuits, because what that does is essentially, let's say I was going to have you as the main plaintiff of a class action lawsuit. Say the court certified that they were allowing the case to go through. All Michigan residents, in theory, all the Michigan residents are going to get notified now, and it would become their duty to notify the court if they did not want to be part of it.
We're losing you again. Katherine Henry is on the phone. She's Attorney Katherine Henry, talking a little bit about this, the latest orders from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. If we can get her back, we'll ask one more question and then wrap up and let her go. She's on the road today. Oh, we lost her. I think, let me see if we can get her back. Joe, can you see if you can grab her back? We lost her on the phone. If we can get her back, we'll continue. If not, we'll wrap this up. But we're going to have her back on the show again to answer some more of these questions. I think the important piece of this is, unfortunately, in the news or the media, when you watch the news at night or wherever, you're not seeing these questions asked. They're just reporting what comes out of a press release, or maybe what they asked the governor and what she said, or the Department of Health and Human Services as fact. They don't question it at all, which I find to be one of the most troubling issues with this entire process since the beginning of this emergency. There haven't been any questions asked about whether any of these institutions have the authority to do these things. We've been asking those questions. We try to get the answers, And unfortunately, nobody else really picks up on it. They deal mostly with whether or not, what this will look like politically, or whether or not politically that it'll go through. And look, I understand some of those things, but I remember from the very beginning, as people started showing up on the Capitol steps there in Lansing, as people started coming from all over, that drive-by protest that happened, people from all over the state of Michigan saying, look, we've had enough. This has gone too far. And people that sided with the governor in the very beginning said this has gone way too far. So I don't know what to tell you because, try one more time, Joe. He's trying to get her back on. It sounds like she is completely lost that signal, but we're going to try. At any rate, I don't know what to say because these people, the movement, the questions. I mean, I just want to say the average American or the average Michigander who just has questions, who doesn't buy this thing whole cloth, we got her back, has these questions. They've been kind of written off. Catherine, we got you back, it sounds like.
Yeah, sorry about that. I lost signal.
No, it's all good. We understand. What I was just talking about is the fact that nobody's asking these questions in so-called journalists or in the news. We're not hearing that. What we're hearing basically is just this report, this constant reporting, the PR being PR arm of the governor, and a lot of times she'll issue a statement, and that's fact or that's law, and nobody asks questions about it. I remember, Catherine, going all the way back to the drive-by protest there in Lansing, and I mean, thousands of people came out. I've never, and I don't think anybody else has ever seen anything like what we saw there in Lansing that day. And for the most part, these people during this entire process were looked at or looked down upon by people in the media, like, oh, these are just a bunch of kooks or conspiracy theorists or whatever. Well, according to the Michigan Supreme Court, I guess not. And that 7-0 decision, I don't understand why they continually just disregard these questions and ignore them and won't ask them. I think it's irresponsible, and quite frankly, that's why we have to have these conversations. I may not agree with everything that someone says, but I want to have the conversation. I want to hear what the ideas are, and that's what we really need more of, is these free exchanges of ideas. We were talking about class action lawsuits when we lost you, so we'll just quickly get back to that, and we'll probably wrap up here in a second so you can get moving too. But I know there are many people in the chat still watching this and asking questions that we'll have to have you back at another time, Catherine, because they definitely have questions, and these people have nowhere else to go for answers.
Right.
So class action, what you were saying, why you weren't a fan of that idea.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what you guys heard, but essentially what it boils down to is when you have a class action, it ends up precluding anybody else that would be considered part of that class from filing their own claim. And so even if you didn't know about it, even if you filed your, refusal to participate and they lost it, or you didn't understand what you had to do, you would have your rights forever impacted. And I'm not a fan of it because of that. And, there are some people that have, certain unique needs that might need to sue the governor at some point. And so for them to be precluded because they have been lumped into this class action, that would be a real problem. Mm-hmm. And again, it's not that everybody should just be out for money, right? But for all the business owners that were forced to shut down or lost income or things like that, really the only people that get rich off of a class action lawsuit are the attorneys. And I say that as an attorney, that I'm not a fan of any situation where the attorneys make all the money and the parties who suffered do not. Yeah.
There's plenty of questions that people will continue to have. Catherine will probably have to try to have you back on. So let's just summarize. You say that the orders issued by the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services fall under the same guise as what the Supreme Court ruled on, in your opinion, on Friday. And we could, in fact, hear from the Supreme Court again within a week or so to tell the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, hey, knock it off, essentially. And we could be back to the legislature working with the governor, which is the way it's intended to work. We'll have to wait and see how this all works out. We know that we'll try and have you back on the air at another time, and we appreciate you working hard and to answer these questions, being very willing to answer these questions and come on. And I know people enjoy hearing from you.
Yeah, and I just want to let people know, because I've been, of course, flooded with phone calls, emails, and text messages, and you name it. I'm not getting paid by anyone to do this. I'm the only attorney who was at the oral argument in the Supreme Court arguing against this, I was the only attorney appearing at all that did not get paid. I, in fact, had to pay a filing fee to file my brief. And so I would ask that if people want me to continue to go, to continue to be able to do this, I'd ask people to go to my website and hit the donate button and donate whatever you're able to. If it's $5, $10, because every time I file a motion in the Supreme Court, there is a fee. Every time I'm having to print another ream of paper or replace my toner cartridge or something of that nature, it's coming out of my pocket. And so I also ask people to keep that in mind when I'm flooded with literally hundreds of questions a day from people. I don't have paid staff to help me. It's just me. I have my volunteer base for the Restore Freedom Initiative. But when it comes to doing the legal work, I don't have secretaries and paralegals and other attorneys in my office. It's just me. So I'm definitely willing to answer any questions, but I would just ask that people keep those few facts in mind.
Are you looking for help, Katherine? If someone has experience in the legal field, would you use that help?
Absolutely. In fact, there's a place on our website, tab called Get Involved. And if they scroll down, there's an option for if you are a legal professional and you would like to assist, you can fill that form out and it'll get over to me and I'll be able to touch base with you. And I would love to be able to do that. I have someone who's going through paralegal schooling right now. I just met with her a couple days ago, and so we're hoping that we can try to have her help in some way pretty soon here. But again, she's somebody that's a couple hours away from me and just starting that school process. So we're not quite sure on that yet. But please, if you have any skills or experience in that regard and you're willing to volunteer, because I'm not getting paid, so I can't pay anyone to help me, please sign up to do that. I'd appreciate the help. Absolutely.
All right, last question for you, and we'll let you go. What should people do between now and the time this is all worked out? I mean, if you're a business owner, if you're a citizen, what should you do?
You should follow the Constitution, because that is our compact, our contract with each other on creating our government, our United States government and our state government. And these orders, none of them are constitutional. They're not legal. They're not constitutional. And it's really important that business owners don't open themselves up for all the lawsuits that will happen when they are violating everyone's rights. And for those individuals who are not sure if they can take their mask off, the answer that I gave people on Friday evening as I was doing interviews about this is still yes, you can take your mask off. You are not legally obligated to wear a mask in public at all. You are not legally obligated to follow any of those edicts from our governor or anyone who works for her. So take off that mask if you want to, burn it if you want to, wear one if you want to, but have kindness and grace and respect towards the other people around you, because if they want to wear a mask, they might have a medical reason for doing so. If they don't want to wear a mask, they have their constitutional rights, or they might even have a medical reason for not wanting to do so. So that's what I would suggest to people from now until whenever we get some finality from the courts on this.
Katherine Henry, thank you so much for being here with us today. We appreciate it. Drive safe and be careful, okay?
Yes, thank you. Have a great day.
Yeah. Well, I know a lot of folks wanting to get some answers, and I hope we are able to do some of that for you and give you some of the answers you're looking for. If you want to know more, you can always go to her website. It's restorefreedomkh.com. We'll put it in the links here in the chat. But also, it's up on the screen now, so you can see that if you'd like to get that. And also, yeah, it looks like somebody posted it too. So we'll just make sure that it's been posted on Facebook and Twitter, and then you're good from there. Again, this is I know this is like the show after the show. We didn't have time to get to this, but we thought it was very important, and you clearly wanted to hear what she had to say, and you clearly had questions. We're trying to get the answers for you. That's been the biggest piece of why we went an extra hour when we were going during the height of this whole thing. Is that you had questions, and we wanted to make sure that we got you the information you need. Now we're back down to an hour, but this show, the after show, we come back on and we try to cover, if there's something important or just something that we didn't get a chance to, we try to continue because we know people have asked for that. At the same time, I know that we've got our programming and that it's important as well. And so we try to get our national programming, Glenn Beck, Rush, and Sean Hannity, and those shows as well. So it's tough. Marjorie's got questions about schools with your kids and things like that. When we have Katherine back on, and we probably will later on in the week at some point, if not this week, next week, to hear maybe the latest developments, or even if you have more questions, you can also email me too, Justin at justinbarclay.com. Justin at justinbarclay.com is my email address. And I've always got a chance to send you some good stuff. You're not hearing it in the news. We've got that worked out. We understand you're not hearing just blatantly news in the news a lot of times. You're not hearing both sides. Anyway, I got this thing called the Good News Letter. I believe there's plenty more of the good stuff happening, and unfortunately, you just aren't hearing about it. And why are they hiding it from us? Good question. You want to get more good news? Go to justinbarclay.com, BARCLAY, justinbarclay.com/good news, and subscribe. It's free. All right, that's it for me. The after show's over. We appreciate you being here with us today. Make it a great day. Click share on this, because I bet there are going to be people that you know, you love, you care about that want to hear this too. So click share and share the love. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Make it a great day.